All right, dudes, welcome to the second episode of Clone Corrects. Today, I am 10 years and 10 pints a week of stout into DD214 and chill, and we're gonna learn how to properly clone everyone's favorite, the Colt 733 Commando. Introduced in 1984 as part of Colt's M-16A2 weapons family, production faded away by the late 90s. The natural successor to the old Colt XM-177E2 from Vietnam, it was part of the natural progression from the M16A2 or A1 weapons family and lacked some of the improvements from the M16A2 program. Now, part of what I call the lightweight trio, with the three models being the 733 with 11.5-inch barrel, the 723 with 14.5-inch barrel, and the 711 with 20-inch barrel. I use the model numbers generically, as Colt did make a slew of different models in very similar configuration, but with different model numbers. Sometimes that model difference could be something as simple as auto versus burst fire control. Most of us, of course, know this rifle from the movie Heat. It was the weapon used by Robert De Niro and Val Kilmer's characters during the bank robbery scene. You want to watch it, I want to watch it, so let's watch it. Edited for clone purposes, of course. My introduction to the Colt 733 was slightly different. In 1997, I was in the Army and deployed to Africa. One of the local forces that we helped train was armed primarily with the Colt 733, and I was able to fire it a few times. The bug bit me. I'm not sure if the 733 was purchased by the US military. There is this famous image showing Navy SEALs in Somalia, 1993, with what looks like Colt Commandos, but I'm not sure if they're actually factory Colt Commandos or some sort of armorer special. The 733 Commando was part of Colt's law enforcement commercial export line, so there was quite a bit of parts variation during production. Now, for clone purposes, I would argue that there are two major variations that can be cloned: early and late. Of course, with these 80s and 90s commercial rifles, there are no hard and fast rules. I only use these terms to separate them based on parts trends. Now, the early rifles to me look too close to an XM177E2 to be cloned, especially if you already have one of those. The latter rifle is what most of us are after. This was the rifle used in Heat, and this was the rifle I saw in Africa and the rifle that I cloned. Now, death by PowerPoint. Are there any turnkey clones? Yes, there are. As of this recording, Palmetto State Armory makes a few under their H&R brand. While not perfect, they can scratch the itch for many. They are sold as a pistol with some sort of oddball brace. Other companies make turnkey uppers that aren't perfect, but might do it for you. Even Noveski got in on the craze a few years ago. Of course, if that doesn't do it for you, then you have to build one. So, what parts are correct? Let's find out. Buffer tube. Most of production used the two-position receiver extension. Towards the end, it was a 4 position. During the late 90s, there was a bit of an overlap where flat top carbines and fixed carry handle carbines were being made. Some of the new features introduced with the USGI M4 series carried over. They are the same shape anyway. The heat rifles used a 2 position extension. The Castle Nut is the same story. Vast majority of production used the early style, while towards the end, the modern style was used. For a heat clone, you need the early style. Finding an original Colt 2-position buffer tube today is difficult. Normally, you have to fight it out on an auction site. Excellent reproductions can be found, or you can just roll with a modern 4-position. I promise I won't tell. Buffer tubes are one of those things where quality matters, so choose carefully. The original style receiver extension nut. Originals can be found for a premium, or you can roll with a reproduction. The new style castle nut. If you can't find one of those, then maybe cloning isn't for you. Earlier in production, the same aluminum vinyl acetate covered stock used on the XM177 series was used. This transitioned to the new plastic version, commonly called the N1 stock. For cloning purposes, these are easy. While Colt originals can commonly be found, they do carry a premium. The aluminum stock's going for over $500 these days. Luckily, there are several excellent reproductions. The Repro N1 stocks are so good that I can't even tell the difference from first glance. The heat guns are using an N1 stock. Lowers will be both the new A2 profile as well as A1 profile lowers that have A2 markings. Remember, these are not US military items, so there was no set standard. For the majority of the production, markings were the standard commercial M16A2 markings. The last runs went to an M16A2 Commando roll mark. And while I haven't seen photos, the M4/M16A2E, or enhanced roll mark, was used towards the end as well, presumably on the Colt M16A2 Commando Enhanced, aka the Model 738. Production seems to have ended before the changeover to the new modern style lower profile started about 2002. The heat rifles used an A2 profile lower. International Milco and H&R both make A1 profile lowers, even with M16A2 COTS markings. Or you could use some of the obscure lowers from 30 years ago that I talked about in more detail in the last episode. Colt A2 profile. The only way to get one is either a period Colt or find one of the obscure commercial lowers from the 90s that use the same profile, which ironically, those are harder to find than the Colt ones. My personal preference when starting an M16A2 carbine project, be it a 733 or 723 or 727, is to find a used law enforcement Colt AR-15A2 government carbine and use the lower half. With that method, you get the proper lower, a 2-position extension, a factory staked receiver extension nut, and an N1 stock. With what these parts go for on the secondary market, it is cheaper in the long run. $400 for a decent N1 stock? Fuck that noise. Pistol grip. The correct grip for the vast majority of production, to include the heat rifles, is the original Colt grip. These are fatter than the modern grips. The last runs made in the late 90s used the new style, which was introduced in 1998. Upper. Some rifles used an A1 upper, but with A2 style port door and forward assist. Generally, this was earlier in production. Others used what was called the A2 field sights, which are the simpler A1 style windage knob, while using the A2 brass deflector, sometimes called by collectors the C7 upper. The most common forge code was CH, while others were used. This still from Heat shows the CH forge code. This photo shows a splintered A marking with a stamped C and is a law enforcement upper that I bought new about 2001. Part of the last runs of Colt 733s. Some of the very late rifles actually used A2 style uppers, but I'm not sure if these were the 733 or a new enhanced model like the 738. Forward assist. Like the M16A2 rifle, the early Colt 733s used the large D-shaped forward assist, while the rest of production transitioned to the standard type. Handguards. The same slim handguards from the M16A1 weapons family was used. Original Colts can still be found for a reasonable cost, and there's an endless supply of reproductions that are close enough. This scan of a 1998 dated Colt brochure showing the M4 Commando enhanced with fixed carry handle shows the Fat M4 style handguards, which entered production while the 733 was still in production. Although every photo I've seen of a 733 shows slim handguards, it is plausible that some of them use the Fat M4 style handguards. The heat rifles, of course, use the slim handguards. Barrel. Most of production used the same A1 profile barrel, which was 0.625 inches in diameter under the gas block. Some of the very late rifles used an A2 profile barrel, 0.750 inches in diameter, but those seem to be very rare in comparison. So rare I couldn't find a photo, and I'm not sure if these were actually 733s or the enhanced model like the 738. The heat rifles, of course, use an A1 profile barrel. Colt barrels are 1 in 7 twist and marked with CCB. Front sight base. Most of production was without a bayonet lug, like the early Colt XM177. Some of the rifles, especially early rifles, still used a bayonet lug. The barrel is the heart of the project, and commercially harder to find than you think. New original Colt 733 barrels can be found for a hefty sum. Sadly to say, these are probably the best option, and I'll explain why. Almost all of the turnkey barrels that I could find had some flaw. Palmetto State Armory does have 733 uppers, but I couldn't find loose barrels. Their website isn't the easiest to use, though, or maybe I was just a fucking idiot. Their 733 barrel on their upper that they do sell does have a bayonet lug and possibly other problems. Brownells has offered some in the past, but these have the wrong profile with a taper towards the end, which the originals lack. And according to their website, use the modern nitrate finish. Out of stock anyway. Spikes Tactical offers an 11.5-inch barrel. It does have the option for a front sight base, however, it's the modern F style. Profile is off anyway as well. Green Mountain Barrels, which has long been rumored to be a possible OEM for Colt at times, does make a nice, proper barrel, but it's without the front sight base and has been out of stock every time I've ever looked. Colt still makes the 933 with 11.5-inch barrel, and barrel assemblies are available. However, about 10 to 15 years ago, Colt changed the barrel profile. The modern 933 barrels are 0.750 inches in diameter under the front sight base, but lightweight profile in front of it. If you found a loose barrel, buying a virgin front sight base is another $50, with labor to have it pinned on being at least another $75, plus any shipping costs. So figure another $150 to $200 by the time it's all said and done. That means that even if you found a Green Mountain barrel for $200, your custom barrel is going to have to be will be close to $400 by the time it's all said and done. The math on the other options is even worse. You could find a used Colt 933 barrel with the old profile, but those are harder to find. Often easier to find a complete upper, but then it would have the wrong front sight base, which is 0.04 inches higher. Flash hider. The only flash hider used was the A2. The heat rifle, it appears that the flash hiders were changed out to earlier A1 style for more dramatic effect when firing blanks. Peel washer versus crush washer will, of course, vary depending on the time when the rifle was made. To me, though, the peel washer is kind of symbolic of the A2 era. Here is my clone of a Colt 733. Now, this is based on the rifles that I shot in Africa, which is identical to the heat rifles as well. Now, for the lower half, what I did is I found a 1995 era Colt AR-15A2 and basically used the lower half. For the upper half, I was lucky enough to find a factory Colt 733, which had the proper upper receiver forge codes for that era of CH. Now, if you haven't noticed, I can't frickin' see very well. So for the optics, what I did is I took an Aimpoint Comp M, the Aimpoint Comp M being introduced in 1993, and then I coupled it with an Arms number 2. That allows basically kind of a period looking piece, but at the same time, still keep the rifle simple. All right, dudes, if you made it this far, thank you for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, and all that jazz. And join us next time where we explore the Colt 723. Later, dudes.